So today I'm going to be diving into how are your words impacting the lives of those around you? How are the words that you are using impacting the lives of those around you? And so I'm going to dive into this because I spoke to our students today about this, and I think it'd be really valuable to share some of their insights for you to be able to think about now, whether or not you're already coaching, whether or not you are wanting to coach people, or whether you're just thinking about the conversations that you're having in general, right? So how are your words impacting the lives of those around you? As always, I'm Becca Lockwood. Yay! Your neuro linguistic programming trainer, hypnosis trainer, and breakthrough coach trainer. So let's dive in. How are your words impacting the lives of those around you? We are constantly speaking, right? We are constantly speaking. We are constantly talking to ourselves. We talk to our family. We talk to our friends. We talk to our co-workers. We are constantly using language, right? Whether we're consciously aware of it or not, we are always talking to ourselves in our minds, and we're constantly using language. So when you learn neuro-linguistic programming and coaching, so when I teach my students NLP and coaching, one of the most important things that I teach is about language and how to use language and how to ensure you're using language in the right way to support your clients to get the outcome that you want from your coaching sessions. Now, it is thought that women use an average of 20,000 words per day. 20,000 words per day, right? But what happens if these words or the language that we're using is not getting us the outcomes that we want in life, right? Or what happens if we're talking to ourselves negatively, or if the words that we're using are negative and we're not necessarily consciously aware of this? Okay, so let's start by thinking about and by understanding what happens when we use our words and how this affects our thoughts and minds. Okay, so we all filter information in different ways. So when we think about things or when we use language, it's because and we choose what language to use and what to filter through to our minds and our brains based on our own version of the world, right? Based on our own version of reality. And everybody has a different version of reality. Everybody has a different model of the world, okay? Now, our model of the world, our version of reality, is based on our beliefs, right? And everybody's got different beliefs. So it's based on our beliefs. It's based on our values, so the things that are important to us. It's based upon our personalities, and we all know that we all have different personalities. It's based on our attitudes, so whether we think something like the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. And it's really based on who we are as people, and this is what makes up who we are as people, right? So we all have different internal representations about our world around us and about our perceived version of reality, and we all experience things differently. We all create different internal representations in our minds, in our brains, about the world, right? And this also, right, remember I said we use on average 20,000 words per day. So this also comes down to the words that we use determine the internal representation that we have, right? So when we use language, we all create different internal representation for the words that we are using, right? We all create a different internal representation for the words that are being used. We all perceive the world differently, and we all perceive words differently, right? And we all create different internal representations for the words that we are using. So this means that we are all thinking differently, right? So we all know, right? This is like common sense. We all know that, right? We all know that we all we all think differently. We all have different beliefs. We all have different personalities. So when it comes to the words that are used and the language that we use when we're having conversations with people or with ourselves or with our family or with our coaching clients, the language and the words that are used create a different internal representation for each individual, right? And this is what makes us who we are. right? This is what makes us all unique. This is what makes us who we are as people, okay? But quite often what happens is when we're having conversations with people, people might not understand what we're meaning by what we are saying. And we forget, don't we? We forget that people all have different personalities. We forget that people all experience things differently. We forget that people have different beliefs. And we expect, right? We expect people to understand what we are thinking by the use of our words and our language. However, we forget that everyone has a different personality, everyone has different beliefs, everyone has a different model of the world, right? So we need to kind of take a step back first of all and remember that because everybody has different personalities, because everybody has different beliefs, because everybody has different values, and because everybody has different things that are important to them in the world, in their version of reality, that also means that we all have different internal representations for the words that are used and the language that is used. And when we're communicating with people, each person has a different communication style. Okay, so when we introduce words into a discussion with somebody, we are creating internal representations into the listener. Okay, so if, for example, we were having a coaching session with somebody and we were using words and questioning in our coaching session, by the words that we are using, we are creating internal representations into the client's minds. Okay, so let me say that again. When you are using words and phrases in the conversations that you're having with your clients, you are creating internal representations into the client's mind. And this is why it's so important to ensure that when you are speaking with your coaching client, or when you're having a conversation with somebody who you want to support to gain further resources, you need to use their language and the language that they have used, because when you feed it back to them, it's creating the internal representation that they have and not your perceived internal representation from your model of the world. Because when we're in a coaching relationship, we don't want to impose our model of the world onto the client, because we're not necessarily supporting them to get further resources for themselves. We may even possibly be limiting them because they may have a different internal representation for the language that is being used. Okay, so this means that if we're talking to, for example, like if we're talking to a kid, right? If we're talking to our kids, I know my 5-year-old, she's really good actually at going to bed. We've got a really good routine. However, in the past we have had times where she may have found it a bit more challenging to go to bed, and she's maybe wanted me to sit with her for longer, or she's wanted me to read to her for longer. And it's easy to fall into the habit of saying things like, there's nothing to be scared of, right? There's nothing to be scared of. But if I said to her, there's nothing to be scared about, then it's me that's introducing the word scared. Right? She may not have had the internal representation that there was anything to be scared of in the first place. But if I said to her, putting my own interpretation onto her behaviour and into her language, and I said, there's nothing to be scared about, don't worry, there's nothing to be scared about. And as a parent, we say things like that because we want to protect our children. We want to support them and we want to protect them, right? But by me introducing the word scared, it's created a different internal representation because it's me that's introduced that word. It's not necessarily the version of reality that she had in that moment of time. Okay, it's like when we think about, like, people say all the time, like, I think this is definitely a British thing, but people say, like, they say, oh, how are you doing? They say, not bad. Right? Now, you've got to remember that we have to first process the word bad in order to understand the meaning of that communication. So we've created an internal representation of bad. Or it's like people say, like, no problem, right? But again, you are first having to process the word problem, and you have to create an internal representation of the word problem to then be able to process the meaning of that communication. So you have to think about the words that you're using and how they're impacting people as you're having conversations with them. So, like, if I said to you now, oh, I'm really sorry that I was late doing this session. My child unfortunately had an accident. Right? You create an internal representation of what I mean with the language that I'm using. Now, some of you may think of something like really bad, right? If I use the word accident, right? However, I may mean, well, at the moment I'm potty training my 2-year-old. So she had an accident on her potty, so I had to change her and clean her up before I came and did the session, right? There's nothing, that's it, right? But when we think about the way that we process language and the words that we're using, we have to be really mindful that everybody creates a different internal representation based on their version of reality. And so when we're using language to communicate with people, especially with our coaching clients, we have to be really, really conscious of the words that we're using. So start being more conscious now about the language that you're using, and really be mindful of how you're having conversations with yourself, how you're having conversations with your coaching clients, how you're having conversations with all of those around you. Something that's really, really powerful to do is, if you're finding yourself feeling maybe you're feeling a bit unsatisfied in life, or you're feeling a bit meh, right? A really powerful thing to do is just to write down, journal and write down on all of the things that are going through your mind, all of the thoughts, all of the language that you're using in your mind. Because what you may find, and I definitely found this when I did this exercise years ago, is that sometimes the language that you're using may be creating possibly negative or not so positive internal representations that's not supporting you in your life. Okay, so a really powerful exercise just to get everything out of your mind and onto paper, to become really clear and mindful of what it is that you're saying to yourself and what language you're using for yourself, is just to write it all down. Yeah, just to write it all down. So it all starts by becoming really consciously aware of how you're using your language and how you're speaking to yourself and how you're speaking to other people. So within my neuro-linguistic programming training, I teach you extensive sections on the use of language, on how this model works and how we all create these internal representations and how we filter information into our model of the world, into our version of reality, and how to really be consciously aware of the way that we speak to ourselves and the way that we speak to other people as well. Okay, so that's it from me today. I just kind of wanted to dip into how your words are impacting the lives of those around you. As always, I'm Rebecca Lockwood, your neuro-linguistic programming trainer, hypnosis trainer and breakthrough coach trainer. We do have our Change Your Mind, Change Your Life program on at the moment, which I'm super excited about. It's so powerful. So if you want to kind of dip your toe into understanding what NLP is and how to use it for yourself in your own life and with your coaching clients, then that is a great resource to do. If you're on Facebook, you can see it in the description. If you're on Instagram, you can see it in the link in my bio, and if you're on the podcast, it's on the show notes. And we also have our full neuro-linguistic programming practitioner training, which certifies you in NLP. Again, if you're on Instagram, it's in the link in my bio. If you've got any questions about it, feel free to pop me a message. And if you're on Facebook, it's in the notes in the description. So that's it from me. Just wanted to keep it nice, short, sweet, actionable, and to give you some insights to go away with and implement. I can see lots of our students on the session, so it's lovely to see you all. Brilliant. So if you've got any questions about our NLP practitioner program, do reach out. Feel free to pop me a message, or you can find more details via the link in the bio or the description. Have an amazing day, and I'll catch you all at the same time next week.